Coming up on Arirang News, the number of coronavirus cases in South Korea continues to fall. 98 local cases today, allowing the Seoul area to do away with some of the strictest social distancing rules. With the Chuseok holiday coming up, Koreans can expect to pay more for the groceries they buy for family dinners. Prices are up 6% at the supermarket because of this summer's flooding and typhoons. And the Chinese video sharing app TikTok says it's not selling to Microsoft. New regulations from Beijing mean the only bidder left is the world's second biggest software company, Oracle. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. From today, with the number of daily coronavirus cases coming down, South Korea has lowered the level of social distancing required in Seoul and the surrounding regions. That means restaurants can once again serve customers later at night, and cafes can let customers eat and drink inside the store. Kim Hyun-sung has the latest.
South Korea on Monday confirmed an additional 109 cases of COVID-19. Of them, 98 are local infections, and most were concentrated in the capital region. Even though the number of confirmed cases remains above 100, officials and the public are happy to see a clear downward trend in terms of new infections. Monday's new cases were down by 12 compared to Sunday. Also, for 2 straight days, the capital region only saw double-digit increases. However, health officials are staying on their toes. With the ease level 2 social distancing measures taking effect and the Korean Thanksgiving holiday of Chuseok a couple of weeks away, concerns linger over a possible fresh wave of infections as it's a time when millions of Koreans typically travel throughout the country. As a result, special virus prevention measures will be put in place prior to the start of the holiday.
Level 2 distancing measures will be in effect for 2 weeks until September 27th. Also, we will classify the Chuseok holiday starting from September 28th to October 11th as a special quarantine period and strengthen prevention measures.
Under the eased rules, customers can now eat and drink inside cafes and in restaurants even after 9 p.m. as long as they strictly adhere to the virus prevention rules, such as contact tracing, social distancing measure, and mask wearing. PC rooms that had been classified as high-risk facilities can also now reopen under the eased level 2 distancing measures. On Monday, 5 more people in South Korea died from COVID-19. The commissioner of Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, Chung Eun-kyung, said she aims to have a domestically produced vaccine ready by next year. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
And more on that last point, South Korea is planning to secure a COVID-19 plasma treatment by the end of the year and develop the vaccine by next year. The ambitious plan was announced on Monday by the Director General of the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, Chung Eun-kyung. She was speaking at a ceremony in which her agency was officially promoted as an independent government body in its own right. She said her agency, the KDCA, is going to establish a National Institute of Infectious Diseases, which will secure the treatment for South Korea and develop the country's own vaccine. Russia has provided 25,000 tons of flour to North Korea to help it overcome COVID-19 and recover from the recent typhoons. The Russian embassy in Pyongyang says the flour arrived in the north at the port of Nampo, and the Russian crew who helped unload are under a 2-week quarantine. The embassy said the North expressed gratitude for the aid, its agriculture sector having been hit badly by a series of typhoons at the end of August and in early September. Russia also sent flour back in May for North Korean women and children. Chuseok, the Korean Thanksgiving holiday, is coming up at the end of this month, and that means family get-togethers, big meals, and other rituals. But the ingredients are going to cost more this year because of the crop losses caused by this summer's record-long monsoon and the recent typhoons. Min Soo-kyun reports.
An orchard owner in Gapyeong, Gyeonggi-do province says it's been a poor harvest this season. Usually at this time of the year, he has to hire apple pickers to help, but this year it's just him and his mother. Heavy rain and strong winds toppled trees, and wet, humid conditions led to a common fruit disease, leaving the family with a few apples to sell for the Chuseok holiday.
Usually, 1 box is enough to collect damaged apples, but this season we've collected 10 boxes, and we don't know how many more to expect. It's been a tough year.
Farmers' profits have dropped due to crop losses, but the impact is also being felt in the country's stores and markets. This year's long monsoon season and a series of typhoons have led prices of fruits and vegetables to spike, adding extra burden on consumers shopping for the upcoming Chuseok holiday. According to the Korea Agro-Fisheries and Food Trade Corporation, the average household is expected to spend $200 to $300 to prepare for Chuseok. Compared to last year, that's a 4% rise for shoppers at traditional markets and 6.6% for those at retail stores. Vegetables are mostly taking the biggest bite of household budgets. Radish prices saw a jump of 159%, and Napa cabbage was up almost 150%. Other essentials for the holiday feast, such as chestnuts and apples, are also at sky-high prices this year.
While shopping for Chuseok varies depending on each household, this year we expect to see about a 20 to 30% increase in expenses.
In a bid to stabilize prices, the government plans to increase food supplies of the 10 most popular Chuseok commodities, including beef and pork. Starting Wednesday for 2 weeks, 6,000 tons of foods will be supplied per day to meet a total of 88,000 tons. Even with these government efforts, Chuseok could be more expensive for consumers this year. Min Suk-hyun, Arirang News.
Falling demand for fuel is forcing a higher number of gas stations in South Korea to close, in part because of COVID-19 and the country's longest ever monsoon season. The number of gas stations in the country has been falling for the past 9 years, but according to the Korea National Oil Corporation, around 70 have closed in the past 6 months. That's already close to the 80 gas stations that shut during all of last year. Gasoline sales from January to July were down almost 3% on year. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news on this Monday, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Young Chuseok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Young, good to have you back on.
Happy to be here.
Well, stocks in New York are really volatile right now. Investors not sure where the big tech stocks are going. Korean markets higher today. What's the story as we start a new week?
Okay, well, the U.S. stocks, after it fell on early September, it's unstable, but it more or less leveled off last week at a level the stock market was around early August of this year. For Friday, Dow and S&P were up about 0.5%. NASDAQ was down 0.6%, but the U.S. market, as well as other global markets, seem to be leveling off, and they're waiting for the U.S. Fed meeting on Thursday, where they will announce the summary of economic projections, forward guidance for monetary policy of the United States, and some indication on whether easy money and high liquidity will continue and whether it will even increase. If the easy money policy continues, expect more rise in stock market and more separation between what's happening in the stock market and the real economy. The European market, as I mentioned, they seem to be level, or there's some markets which are rising. The FTSE in England and DAX were rising, and that's somewhat surprising because the post-Brexit negotiations on the trade relationship between UK and EU reportedly are not going well, and UK may go back on their Brexit agreement dealing with borders between Ireland, Northern Ireland, and UK. Euro 50 and CAC were more or less level, though there was a lot of volatility. In the Asian market, Nikkei was rising all last week, and it rose today. The feeling is that the choice of new prime minister after Abe is going smoothly, so that's feeding positive feelings into the market. And then Shanghai and Hang Seng were rising since last Wednesday. Kospi and Kosdaq, unlike most of the global markets, they seem to be rising steadily, if slowly, for the last week and today. The basic mood, not only in the Korean market but in the global market, is that it was more or less an uneventful week because all the investors are waiting to see what the Fed will say this week.
Indeed. Well, looking at Korea, its exports so far this month are down about 0.2% from a year ago. The daily average is down almost 12%. It would seem, though, that things are getting better. What stands out to you in these numbers?
Okay, well, it's tentatively good news, but we shouldn't count the chickens before they're hatched. The 10-day figures are always difficult because the number of days off, because of the number of weekends that are counted within those 10 days can throw off the figures very much comparing year to year. And also, the early data can really be misleading. Last year, the early September, the first 10 days of September, we saw a 7.2% increase. In 2018, we saw, again, the early September numbers, we saw a 13.8% increase. But when we got to the end of the month, for the month as a whole, 2018, it was minus 8.1%. For the September, it was minus 11.7%. And the inclusion of the Chuseok holiday in September makes comparison with these numbers, the previous numbers, very, very difficult. Now, this month, for the entire September, I do expect the export numbers to go up a little bit, but that's not because of any global recovery. It's because this year, unlike the last 2 years, only one day of the Chuseok holiday falls in September. The rest of the days fall in October, so that should help the statistics somewhat, not necessarily the economic underlying conditions. If you look at the export figures, semiconductors and automobiles had a big gain. There's some speculation that the increase in semiconductor exports were due to hoarding by Huawei because U.S. has ordered that from the 15th of this month, companies making semiconductors using American technology can no longer export semiconductors to Huawei. And geographically, exports to China and U.S. rose, but other regions fell. And that's likely because Chinese economy is actually recovering from the coronavirus. The other economies are not the big wild card here, as always, is the United States. Even though their economy seems to be down, their exports seems to be going up, and that's because the COVID infection in the United States differs widely region by region.
All right, Professor, we're almost out of time, but what's on your radar for the week ahead?
Okay, well, for the foreign numbers, as I mentioned, the biggest interest is going to be the Fed FOMC meeting on Thursday, where they will announce the summary of economic projections and possible future monetary policy for guidance. And then for the domestic figures, the Bank of Korea has a financial statement analysis for the second quarter coming up this week, and that'll show the rough firm profitability and financial data for the second quarter. It's going to be somewhat outdated because it is the second quarter figures, but still, it should show us something about how the coronavirus has affected the Korean economy.
Got it. All right, Professor, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
The Chinese video sharing app TikTok has decided not to sell its U.S. operations to Microsoft after all and has notified the company. That leaves as the only bidder Oracle, the world's #2 software company. Oh Jung-hee reports.
Oracle has leapfrogged Microsoft as the most likely buyer of China's short video app TikTok. Microsoft said earlier on Sunday that ByteDance, the owner of TikTok, notified the firm that it would not be selling off its U.S. operations to Microsoft. Back in early August, President Trump issued an executive order that TikTok's U.S. operations must be sold by September 20th. He later issued another executive order that if the app is not sold, it has to stop operations in the U.S.
TikTok is moving along. We'll see what happens. It'll either be closed up or they'll sell it. So we'll either close up TikTok in this country for security reasons or it'll be sold. I'm not extending deadlines, no. It's September 15th. There'll be no extension of the TikTok deadline.
The latest move from Washington comes as the Trump administration believes Chinese technology collects U.S. citizens' personal information and sends that to Beijing. This is also why Washington banned Huawei's 5G network and equipment in the U.S. The Trump administration is looking to ban more Chinese apps that could pose a national security threat. Microsoft has said in August that once it buys TikTok's U.S. operations, it would be able to gain control of the app's underlying computer source codes. However, that effort was scuttled as China came up with a regulation that bars TikTok from transferring its technology to a foreign buyer without permission from the Chinese government. Oracle has said nothing publicly about what it'll do with TikTok's underlying technology. 오정희, Arirang News.
South Koreans overseas will be able to access some consular services through a smartphone app starting this Tuesday. The Foreign Ministry says the app will offer consular services such as overseas registration, updating the ministry on where you are and how long you'll be there, or viewing the status of paperwork and applications you filed. The app is available for download on Google's Play Store from Tuesday, and an iPhone application will be available in mid-October. On the occasion of his birthday, one of the members of BTS, the rapper RM, has made a big donation to support the contemporary arts. The National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art said Monday that RM donated 100 million won, about $85,000 to help promote a culture of reading about art and to help young people develop their own artistic taste. RM turned 26 over the weekend. The money will go toward buying 4,000 art books and distributing them to some 400 public libraries, especially those in rural, mountainous areas where museums and galleries are few and far between. And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.